He survived the cliffs and the cruelty that followed. But his deepest wound wasn't in his leg. It was believing no one would ever call his name again. He waited in silence inside a rusted cage, days fading into weeks until hope became a thin shadow in his tired eyes. Then one ordinary morning, everything changed. A child approached his cage with no fear, no pity, only a gentle courage. She knelt beside the trembling dog, saw the story in his scars, and whispered words that would change his life forever. If this moment touched your heart, I would love to hear your thoughts. Tell me in the comments. The morning lay quietly across the small town of Willow Creek, wrapped in a gentle sheet of mist that drifted through the pine trees like an old memory returning from far away. The sun had not yet fully risen. Its weak rays touched the rooftops with the softness of a trembling hand. It was the kind of morning where older folks stepped onto their porches with a cup of warm coffee, taking slow breaths as if they were greeting an old friend. Yet on this peaceful day, in a corner most people never bothered to look at, a life that once knew honor and purpose trembled inside the darkness of a metal cage. Near the back of the open-air market, behind crates of apples and jars of honey, stood a rusted pen leaning against the shadowy wall of an old barn. Inside lay Rex, a German shepherd whose spirit had been worn down like a stone in a river. His fur, once thick and proud, had turned dull with dust. His right hind leg bent unnaturally from an old injury. The fall from the cliff had shattered more than bone. It had taken away the sense of safety a dog needs to feel like the world will not break him again. After months of drifting between shelters and hands that cared more about money than compassion, Rex had been sold to a man who wanted nothing except another bottle of bitter liquor. That man kept Rex only long enough to trade him again and again until finally he ended up here, in the forgotten corner of the market, waiting for whatever fate decided next. Most people walked by without a second glance. Some felt uneasy when their eyes briefly met Rex's. They saw something they did not want to understand. It was easier to look away than to face the pain that settled in those tired, amber eyes. But Rex still watched every passerby, not with hope, but with a quiet resignation, as if he had accepted that the world no longer had a place for him. Not far from the cage, the market was alive with the sounds of laughter, the scent of warm bread, and the chatter of familiar neighbors greeting one another. Children dashed between stalls, chasing their reflections in the shiny red apples. Mothers compared bundles of fresh herbs, while fathers inspected tools and farming supplies. It was a morning that held the sweetness of ordinary life. Then, among all this movement and color, walked Lily Carter, a 10-year-old girl with thoughtful eyes that observed the world more deeply than most adults. Her mother, Officer Emily Carter, had brought her along to buy vegetables and meat for supper. They strolled together through the market, Lily studying each stall with curiosity, until her gaze shifted and froze upon the lonely cage near the barn. Something in Rex's stillness called to her. Lily slowed her steps, almost unconsciously, as if an invisible thread had tugged at her heart. She took 2 careful breaths and whispered softly, "Mom, wait." Emily turned, puzzled. Lily's attention was fixed on the shadowed corner. Emily followed her daughter's eyes and sighed, quietly. She had seen many injured animals throughout her years on the police force, many of them too hurt or too frightened to trust people again. She recognized the posture immediately. This was not a dangerous dog. This was a broken one. Lily moved closer. Her sneakers brushed against the straw scattered on the ground. She crouched down in front of the cage without fear. "Mom," she murmured, He looks like he is hurting." Rex lifted his head at the sound of her voice. His ears twitched, uncertain, and the slow rise and fall of his breath trembled slightly, as if he were trying to decide whether to move toward her or hide even deeper in the shadows. Emily started to reach out to pull her daughter back, but stopped. She saw something shift in Rex's eyes, something small, something fragile. It was not aggression, it was not panic. It was the faintest flicker of recognition, as though somewhere deep inside, he still remembered what gentle voices sounded like. The man who owned the cage approached from behind them, his voice slurred. $1 if you want him. Just take the thing off my hands." His tone carried no warmth, only impatience, and Emily recognized the stale scent of alcohol clinging to him. She had seen his type before. He traded living creatures for money the way others traded old furniture they no longer wanted. Lily looked up at her mother with a pleading softness in her eyes. "Mom, we have to help him." Emily's heart tightened. She had taught her daughter to be kind, to stand up for the vulnerable, but she also knew the risks of taking in an injured dog with a history no one fully understood. Still, when she watched Lily lower herself gently to the ground, palms open, voice steady and warm, she could not deny that the child saw something deeper than scars and fear. She saw a chance for healing. Emily kneeled beside her daughter and spoke quietly. "Lily, dogs like him can be frightened. They might not always know we mean well. If we take him home, you must promise to follow every rule I give you. I will sign the papers, but only if you promise to be patient. He has suffered more than we can imagine." Lily nodded without hesitation. "I promise." Emily turned to Rex. "It is all right," she said gently. "We are not here to hurt you." Lily lifted her hand slowly. The gesture was soft, respectful, and filled with compassion that Rex had not felt in a very long time. At first he shrank back, trembling, but Lily did not move away. She simply waited. Her stillness was the kind that offered safety rather than pressure. Rex leaned forward, inch by inch, as if the air itself weighed heavily upon him. His nose quivered. The scent of kindness was a distant memory, but not lost. Finally, with a hesitation so delicate that it almost broke Emily's heart, Rex raised his paw and placed it on top of Lily's hand through the metal bars. Time seemed to pause. The market noise faded into something soft and far away. Emily swallowed hard as her eyes stung unexpectedly. There were no words needed to understand what she had just witnessed. It was not just a dog reaching out. It was a soul asking for permission to hope again. Emily unlocked the cage. Rex did not bolt. He did not growl. He stepped out slowly, carefully, like someone walking into a world he was not sure he was welcome in. But Lily stood beside him, and he leaned against her leg, choosing her not out of fear, but out of trust. As the morning sun finally broke through the mist, it rested on the three of them, a mother, a child, and a wounded dog standing together on the straw-covered ground. In the quiet glow of that new light, something unspoken connected them. They did not know yet that this moment would change all their lives. They only knew that a forgotten hero had been seen, and in being seen, had been saved. Rex's first steps outside the cage were uncertain, like a soldier who had forgotten what freedom felt like. The air carried new scents, the warmth of the sun, the rustle of people walking by, and the familiar closeness of Lily standing beside him. She held the leash gently, not pulling, simply walking next to him as though she understood that trust could not be forced. Emily walked on his other side, her posture steady and watchful. It was the stance of a woman who spent years reading danger, but also one who carried quiet hope that this fragile connection might be something extraordinary. The road from the market to their home curved through the outskirts of Willow Creek, a neighborhood lined with maple trees that swayed lazily in the spring breeze. Porch swings squeaked in the distance. Elderly neighbors tended to their gardens, pausing to wave politely as the carters passed. Some raised their brows in curiosity at the sight of the limping shepherd walking so close to Lily, but no one questioned it. Willow Creek was a place where stories unfolded slowly and quietly, often beginning with a simple act of kindness. When they reached the Carter home, Rex hesitated at the front step. The porch boards had a history of their own, worn smooth by years of footsteps and late-night conversations under soft porch lights. Rex sniffed them cautiously, pausing as though uncertain whether he was allowed to enter this world. Lily crouched beside him and placed her palm gently on the step. "It is your home now, too," she whispered. Something in the sincerity of her voice carried the weight of a promise. Rex lifted his good front paw, placed it on the step, then slowly pulled himself up. Emily watched with quiet awe. It was not a triumphant moment, but a tender one, a wounded heart crossing the threshold into possibility. Inside, the house smelled faintly of cinnamon from the pastries Emily baked the night before. Lily hurried to bring a soft blanket from her room, spreading it carefully near the living room sofa. "This can be your spot," she said with pride. Rex stood still, unsure of what to do. Then he walked toward the blanket, circled once, and lowered himself onto it. His injured leg stretched out stiffly. His breathing slowed. The room felt enormous to him, not because of its size, but because it was the first space in months where pain was not the only thing he knew. The rest of the afternoon was quiet. Lily sat beside Rex, reading aloud from a book she loved about a brave dog who found a home after being lost for years. Her voice rose and fell gently, flowing like a stream smoothing stones as it passed. Rex's ears twitched at the sound. He rested his head on his paws and closed his eyes, not to sleep, but to listen. Emily watched them from the kitchen doorway. Her hands held a dish towel, but she forgot she was holding it. She saw how Rex's breathing shifted from tense to calm. She saw the way he glanced at Lily with something she recognized from her years of working with K-9 units. It was the early glow of loyalty, faint but unmistakable. And she knew that bonds like that do not form unless the heart is ready. Later, when evening settled over the house and the sky outside their windows turned a soft shade of violet, Emily brought food for Rex. He sniffed the bowl hesitantly. Months of being mistreated had taught him not to trust what was placed before him. Lily knelt beside the bowl and took a small spoonful. "See? It is safe." She pretended to take a bite, then laughed softly. "Well, not really for me, but it is good for you." Rex inched forward and took a careful mouthful, chewed, swallowed, then took another. Lily's smile widened until her cheeks glowed. By the time night approached, the air outside filled with the steady hum of crickets. Lily brushed Rex's fur with slow, patient strokes. With each motion, more dust fell away. The soft brown and black beneath began to show again, revealing the dog he once was. Rex leaned into the touch. His tail, which had hung motionless for so long, thumped once against the floor. It was small, almost shy. Yet Emily felt tears rise at the sound. When it was time for bed, Emily guided Lily to her room. "He is settling," she whispered, "but he still needs space. Let him rest. You did enough for one day." Lily nodded but paused in the doorway, looking back at the shepherd on his blanket. "Good night, Rex," she said gently. Rex lifted his head. His eyes followed her until she disappeared behind her door. Emily walked to Rex and crouched down. "I do not know what you have been through," she murmured, "but I know you tried to be brave. We will try too, one day at a time." Rex blinked slowly. It was the closest he could come to saying he understood. That night, after the house fell quiet, Rex remained awake long after the lights were off. He listened to the soft breathing of the humans in the house. The rhythm was calm and steady. Safe. He lowered his head onto the blanket Lily had placed for him and let his eyes close. For the first time since the cliff, since the pain, since the long chain of hands that did not care, Rex slept without fear of what the morning might bring. And as the moonlight trickled through the window like a silver ribbon, the house held its breath around him, as if acknowledging that a long, broken heart had begun, at last, to mend. The next few days in the Carter home passed with an unexpected softness. Rex began to understand the rhythms of the house. He learned that the creak of the kitchen floor meant Emily was preparing breakfast, that the metallic click of Lily's backpack zipper meant she was getting ready for school, and that the quiet hum of the living room lamp in the evening meant it was time to rest. Every sound slowly lost its threat. Every movement became familiar. But even as his body relaxed and his breathing steadied, there were shadows in Rex's memory that had not yet lifted. Some wounds lie under the skin like old echoes, waiting for a familiar silence to rise again. One evening, after Lily had returned from school with stories about drawing class and a shy hamster her friend had brought to show and tell, she sat beside Rex on the living room carpet. She brushed his fur as she always did, careful around the old scars. Rex had begun to lean into her touch without hesitation. His tail rested loosely against the floor. Emily watched them from her chair, a cup of tea warming her hands. These small moments, so ordinary yet so full of grace, reminded her how healing rarely arrived loudly. It came in breaths, in patience, in quiet conversation spoken without words. But healing is never a straight path. That night, the house settled into darkness as Lily drifted to sleep, and Emily retired to her room after her late shift at the station. Rain tapped gently against the windows. Rex lay curled on his blanket, listening to the distant rumble of thunder. It was the kind of sound that sometimes pulled the past closer. In the uneasy quiet between raindrops, a faint scrape came from the back of the house. Rex lifted his head. The air shifted. A scent reached him, sharp and unfamiliar. Two figures moved outside the kitchen window. Their whispers blended with the rain, but Rex caught the tremor of intent behind them. His muscles tensed, and the old instincts stirred awake. The instincts of a protector. Before he could decide whether to bark or hold his ground, the back door latch clicked. A beam of dim light swept across the kitchen floor. One of the intruders muttered, "Make it quick. Take anything we can grab. The place looks easy." They did not know that a dog lay waiting in the dark. Not just any dog. A dog who once stood between good and danger more times than anyone could count. Rex rose, careful not to startle Lily, who lay asleep in the adjoining room. His paws stepped silently across the carpet. His injured leg trembled, but he pushed through the ache. He had faced pain before. What mattered now was that a child slept in this house. A child who trusted him. A child who gave him back his name. The intruders stepped further inside. One walked toward the hallway where Lily slept. The other rummaged through a drawer, searching for valuables. Rex's growl started low, like the rumbling of a distant storm. Sharp, controlled. The kind of sound that reminded predators that they were not alone. The man in the hallway froze. "What was that?" he whispered. "Probably their dog," the other replied, though his voice lacked certainty. It was the tone of a man who sensed something he did not want to face. They took one more step, and that was enough. Rex lunged forward with a force that surprised even him. His old training pulsed through his veins. His body moved before fear could stop him. The man near the hallway fell backward, arms flailing as Rex pinned him to the ground with a heavy paw and a snarl that filled the room. The second intruder swung toward Rex with a metal flashlight, but Rex turned sharply, baring his teeth. His eyes held a warning shaped by every year he served as a K-9. The man backed away, stumbled, and fell against the counter. From upstairs, Emily heard the commotion. Her instincts rushed ahead of her. "Rex!" she breathed, racing down the stairs. She arrived to find him standing between her child's bedroom and the intruders, his chest heaving, his teeth bared, but his control unbroken. "Rex, stay!" she commanded firmly, using the same tone she once used with police dogs during training. And Rex obeyed instantly. He stepped back, but kept his gaze fixed on the men as Emily grabbed her radio. "This is Officer Carter. I need immediate backup. 2 intruders in my home." Her voice never wavered. Within minutes, red and blue lights painted the windows. Officers stormed through the front door and secured the 2 intruders. One of them muttered curses under his breath, gripping his wounded pride more than his bruises. An officer shook his head. "A dog did this?" he asked in disbelief. Emily knelt beside Rex. He was trembling with adrenaline. She cupped his face gently and whispered, "You protected her. You protected all of us." Rex leaned into her touch, his tail lifting just enough to give a slow, exhausted wag. Lily appeared in the hallway, rubbing her eyes. "What happened, Mom?" Emily lifted her gently and pointed to Rex. "He kept you safe, sweetheart." Lily wrapped her arms around Rex's neck. "My brave boy," she whispered. For Rex, the world returned to silence again. But it was no longer the silence of fear. It was the silence of a hero remembered. The morning after the break-in carried a different kind of hush. Willow Creek was a small town, and news traveled quickly, weaving from porch to porch like a soft breeze carrying stories too important to keep quiet. Neighbors who heard the sirens the night before stepped outside with worried expressions, only to learn by dawn that the Carter home had been saved by an unlikely guardian. Rex lay on his blanket, tired but awake. The events of the night had stirred something in him that had long been dormant. It was not merely instinct. It was purpose, a sense of belonging that he thought he had lost somewhere between the cliff's edge and the cold hands that passed him along. When the first police cruiser arrived for follow-up, Officer Garcia stepped out with a wide-eyed look. "Is he really the one who stopped them?" he asked Emily. "He did more than stop them," she said softly. "He stood between my daughter and danger. He never wavered." Garcia crouched beside Rex, shaking his head in admiration. "What a dog. He looks older, but he still has fire." A second car pulled up. This time it was Captain Nathan Hayes, a man whose presence carried the calm authority of someone who had weathered many storms. He stepped inside the Carter living room, his eyes immediately falling on Rex. At first his expression was curious, then his breath caught. "I know this dog," he murmured. Emily glanced at him. "You do?" Captain Hayes kneeled slowly, studying Rex's face with reverence. "This is Rex, K-9 unit veteran. He saved one of our officers years ago during a raid in the mountains. We thought he died when he fell over that cliff. He placed a steady hand on Rex's head. I can't believe he is alive. Rex's ears perked at the familiar tone of authority and warmth. He sniffed Hayden's sleeve, searching his memory. A faint recognition flickered in his eyes. The man's voice carried echoes of the kennel, of training fields, of days when Rex had run alongside officers under the sun, without fear of what tomorrow might bring. You were a good soldier, Hayes whispered. You still are. Lily watched from the sofa, hugging a small cushion. He is my hero, she said proudly. Hayes nodded. He is everyone's hero. The days that followed brought attention Rex had never expected. The local newspaper published a story titled, "Dog Sold for $1 Saves Family from Home Invasion." People visited the Carter home with treats, blankets, and thank you letters. Some cried when they heard what Rex had endured before Lily found him. Others brought old photographs of their own pets, sharing memories with the Carters, as if Rex's courage reminded them of the loyalty they once loved. Emily watched all of it with gratitude, but also with a quiet realization. She saw how many animals in the town were still wandering without homes. She saw how quickly people dismissed the old and the injured. She saw how a child's heart could change the ending of a story that once seemed already written. In the afternoons, she sat on the porch with Rex resting at her feet. Lily often joined them with a storybook in hand, reading aloud to both of them. Rex would rest his head on her lap, his breathing soft and content. The porch light glowed above them as the sun sank into a warm, golden haze. One evening, as fireflies danced at the edge of the yard, Emily turned to Lily and said, "Your kindness did not just save Rex. It reminded me of something I forgot, that every soul deserves a chance to be seen, even the ones who look broken." Lily leaned her head on her mother's shoulder. He just needed someone to believe in him. Emily wrapped an arm around her. Maybe there are more like him out there. Maybe we can help them too. And so, mother and daughter began to plan something that would soon change the entire town. Summer came to Willow Creek with warm breezes and the scent of blooming clover. The abandoned barn where Rex had once been sold now stood transformed. Fresh boards replaced the broken walls. Sunlight spilled through clean new windows. A large painted sign hung proudly above the door. It read, "Rex's Hope Animal Rescue and Rehabilitation Center." The transformation was not done by contractors or distant donors. It was born from Emily's determination and Lily's gentle heart. Neighbors volunteered. Retired carpenters brought their tools. School children donated handmade toys and blankets. Even the local grocery store contributed food for the rescue animals with a note that read in simple letters, "Thank you, Rex." At the center of it all was the dog who had once been forgotten. Rex walked slowly beside Lily down the aisle of newly built kennels. His injured leg gave him a slight limp, but he carried himself with a quiet dignity. Dogs who had been abandoned or mistreated watched him with curiosity. Some wagged their tails. Others lifted their heads for the first time in days. It was as if they sensed something familiar in him, something comforting. A survivor who understood their stories without needing to hear a single word. Volunteers came daily. Children brushed the dogs with patient hands. Older men who had lost their spouses found purpose in building ramps, painting fences, and fixing anything that needed repair. Women knitted blankets and sat beside anxious animals, humming lullabies that softened even the hardest memories. The center became a place of second chances, not only for animals, but for people too. Lily helped every day after school. She worked with a seriousness far beyond her years. She sat near the most frightened dogs, reading softly until they came closer. She carried bowls of food with care. She comforted new arrivals with her gentle voice. Emily watched her daughter grow not only in height, but in spirit. One afternoon, the mail arrived in a large bundle. Emily carried it inside the office where Lily and Rex waited. When she opened the first envelope, a smile tugged at her lips. "You will want to hear this," she said. The letter came from a boy in a nearby town. He wrote that after hearing Rex's story on the news, he begged his parents to adopt an old shelter dog no one wanted. He named the dog Hero because Rex gave him courage to see worth in the forgotten. Letter after letter told similar stories. Families adopting animals they once overlooked. People donating because they believed in the mission. Seniors visiting the center because the animals brought them peace. Tears filled Emily's eyes as she read them aloud. Lily hugged Rex tightly. "See," she whispered into his fur, "you are helping everyone now." That evening, as the sun melted into shades of rose and amber, Lily and Rex walked to the hill behind the rescue center. The grass shimmered in the fading light. Lily sat down and Rex lowered himself beside her. She leaned her head gently against his shoulder. The breeze carried the distant laughter of volunteers cleaning up for the day. "You know," she said softly, "I did not save you. You saved me." Rex pressed his head against her side. The gesture was simple, but filled with a depth that needed no voice. A depth that came from two souls who had found the missing piece of their worlds in each other. Down below, the sign bearing Rex's name glowed under the porch light. A symbol not just of his story, but of every life that had been given another chance. A reminder that sometimes the smallest kindness can change the path of a forgotten heart. And somewhere in that warm, gentle twilight, Willow Creek felt like a kinder place, a place where a broken dog became a beacon of hope, a place where a little girl taught an entire town what compassion truly looks like, a place where a life sold for $1 became priceless. The end. This story reminds us that every life, no matter how wounded or forgotten, carries a quiet worth waiting to be seen. A single act of compassion can revive a broken spirit, and sometimes the smallest hearts show us the greatest truths. We do not save others by strength alone, but by kindness, patience, and the courage to believe in second chances